Oh, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, CEO, esteemed guests, entrepreneurs, managers, and supply chain enthusiasts. Now I'm going to share screen with you first on my presentation slides. Okay. All right. My my name is. If you can see my screen, I would appreciate if you just say Ken. Just on the chat itself, and let's try to be as a bit interactive. You can ask me questions. My name is David Chong, the program leader for Global Supply Chain Management, Sunway University Business School. Um, Welcome to a Friday afternoon talk on supply chain management. The issue will be on digitalization reimagined. First of all, before I start, I'd like to thank Astro AWANI for this opportunity to share my views on supply chain and how the digitalization has an impact on the supply chain itself. Okay, now I put a topic as a digitalization reimagined. I feel that due to the many changes and technology is taking over our lives today. So what I'm going to give you a talk is, as it's only about an hour, is how we should approach digitalization and how, based on my many discussions with companies, we should be very careful on how we use technology. Okay. Having said that, I would like to start with now, based on the last 2 years of major disruptions in businesses, particularly affecting SMEs. I believe my big audience will be SMEs. There are two major disruptions. One is the pandemic, which is the COVID-19. It affected almost everybody, including businesses, more so for supply chain management, for the SMEs. The second major disruption is the political interference that we get in the trade today. I'm actually referring to the trade restrictions between the United States and China. Having said that, so let me share my views here on how you can collaborate, particularly leveraging on technology to enhance your supply chain, the supply chain processes. And now I will be discussing the issues based on what I've researched based on the discussion with quite a number of multinationals. I may not bring in direct references or actual case studies because of the fact that the companies we have confidentiality and legal issues, which I cannot mention the name. So having said that, without further ado, I will go on and discuss with you what are the topics for today. Okay, so the agenda is quite simple. What I will do is, based on an hour talk, to break it down into three main parts. Now, to understand supply chain and particularly how digitalization has been impacting the supply chain, we need to understand where it comes from and how where it's going to go from now, from here today. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit brief history of the supply chain management, and then I will move on to the supply chain in practice. And it's what I found out particularly over the last 2 years. Okay, during the disruption period. And then where do I think the supply chain will move into the future, and particularly with the technology in hand. All right. Now, if you can see my screen, what I've done is, if you look at supply chain, okay, over the last 70 years, let's start with around just after the Second World War, where 1950s, supply chain has been transformed a number of times. Okay, you can see that this diagram speaks for itself in the sense that the idea of the supply chain started many years ago. Okay, it actually started back in 1915 when a guy called Shaw from Harvard Business School talked about this topic on supply chain. All right, and what he was talking about was how is the best way to purchase raw material, transport products, locate the facilities, analyze productivity and waste. And there's another person whom I would like to mention here, John Langley. He's a professor in supply chain, okay, from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He discussed the idea that companies need to work together, coordinate their activities, and what are the big problems in the supply chain world today. Okay. Um, Without further ado, now I'd like to just mention here from these 80s onwards, okay, over the last 40 years, this is where supply chain had a breakout years. Okay, that's where supply chain became widely used. Okay, this started in some of the incentives from the US manufacturers, where they were looking for the objectives of the company were lower costs, higher quality products, and another big element is the higher levels of customer services. Okay. Now, when we look at manufacturers in the supply chain world, what they're looking for is their processes. Okay. For example, the processes of manufacturers include just in time, total quality management, and the strategies of how they need to improve quality, manufacturing efficiency, and delivery times. Another two areas, come back to the issue of just in time. This has been developed for firms to realize issues like scheduling and production issues, production problems. So this is an important area for companies to cooperate and strategically plan their supplier, buyer, customer relationships. So, so the concept of these partnerships, okay, between the suppliers, customers, and buyer, emerged as manufacturers experimented with all these other processes in operations, which is JIT, TQM. So these were the origins of supply chain management. Okay. And the last part here I want to show you is if you look at the future, now it's written there, increase supply chain capabilities. In order to achieve that, okay, this is part of my today's talk here. How are you going to achieve that? Okay. Now, the big word here is technology, okay, or digitalization your supply chain processes. Now, without further ado, can I ask the organizers to, what I'd like to say is let's have an interactive session, and I'm going to create a poll, okay, and now can you please decide, okay, look at the poll, and what are the most important processes that affects your company in terms of profits or lower costs, okay? Can I have that poll, please? I'm still waiting for the poll to come in. Is the poll ready? Wait, I'm just getting them to get the poll in. Oh dear, I don't think they are responding. One moment now, because I okay. Well, I hope they will get my poll in soon. While waiting for them to get a poll, I will just continue this discussion here because I need to get your interaction, your feedback for the poll. Yeah, it's here. Thank you. Can we all look at the poll and decide, okay, which of these 6 elements, preferably you can choose 3 of these elements, and from there we can do some discussion from here. These are the 6 main areas that we shall be discussing for your digitalization of the of your supply chain processes. Okay, I'm still waiting. Okay, now while you're deciding on the poll, I'm still looking at see what is the sort of response we can get. Anybody? I cannot. All right. All right. Now let me move on to another area, which is to look at the some of the definitions, or rather, what is supply chain. Now, I'm going to show you a few slides, okay? And then from there, I will do a summary of what is it all about, okay? What are the main processes? What are the main objectives of supply chain, okay? Now, I'm sure that this has been practiced in your company. For example, if you look at raw materials to intermediaries, to the manufacturer and wholesalers and retailers, okay? That's one example. And you can see the arrows. The arrows are very important in supply chain because it determines the movement and the directions of how the items move, okay? Now, let me show you another one, okay? Now, this is a typical supply chain definition, and then it consists of 8 areas. It's a very simple and, shall I say, summary of what supply chain is all about, okay? And you can see that the main items are the supply chain, suppliers, distributors, inventory, visibility or tracking, manufacturing, logistics, and the supply chain management. And they are actually the main items for supply chain. Okay. Now moving on to another typical definitions, you can see that these definitions are part and parcel of what different companies look at supply chain management. Having said that, okay, all of these definitions have a common, all right, outcome, okay, and this is another example of the supply chain. You can particularly find it in Google, but the point here is all of them are having a similar message. Okay, now in order to go to be more specific on supply chain, we must see what is that message, and from there we can develop a better understanding of how you need to digitalize your supply chain management. All right. So based on these definitions and all these various types of models in supply chain processes for different companies, okay, basically what they are talking about is the importance of supply chain management. Now, I want to bring you to these big outcomes of this supply chain, okay, the major outcomes. A successful supply chain would look at, number 1, lower purchasing or carrying costs. Number 2, better product quality. Number 3, higher customer service levels, and of course, increase sales and profits. Now, I'm very sure that most companies, particularly supply chain, the SMEs, we are looking at all 4 to achieve your objectives. Okay, and so having said that, okay, Now, let's see what are the common elements of most companies, right? Here. At the basic level, supply chain is looking at the flow of goods, products, okay, data, information, and finances, money, okay, related to that product or service that the company is manufacturing or producing or transacting. From the raw materials to the delivery of the product and to its final destination. Based on those definitions we discussed earlier or has shown you, what are the four main elements of supply chain? 1, supply. 2, operations. 3, logistics. 4, integration. If you were to improve your supply chain processes, okay, they will involve at least some of all these four elements, okay? You cannot have just one, you need all these four, all right? I've put in my notes the specific areas of each of these elements, all right? Just to briefly outline for you, if you look at the supply side, you've got to look at your supply base, where they come from, where is the raw material come from, who is supplying your raw materials or even your services, okay? What sort of supplier alliances do you have? How well do you manage your supply relationships? And we have something, another one is global sourcing. Now, if you look at operations, it will involve demand operation. That means you need to make analysis of your customers in terms of the amount of product they want to buy. And other areas like inventory management is part of operations. And then you have the ERP. Now, ERP is enterprise resource planning. It's part and parcel of how you manage your internal and your external environment. Other major issues in the processing, in operations will involve lean systems, okay? Under logistics, you have what we call logistics management, okay? What are you trying to, how do you undertake your transportation, your distribution, your delivery, okay? And it involves how well you design your network, your distribution network, okay? And there are other important areas in logistics like how do you use your technology? For example, radio frequency, RFID, the service response logistics, okay? And finally, there's the integration. Basically here is integration requires you to look into your internal systems and your external environment. How well do they integrate to each other? This is one of the bigger issues or rather areas where you can achieve successful corporate objectives through supply chain by integrating your various environmental issues, factors. Having said that, all right, so this talk we will focus on the 4 areas of digitalization, okay? These are the issues that I just mentioned, all right? So I just move to the areas of supply chain integration. Now, an example of integration process, I use one example here, is the digitalization of the integration of the supply chain. Now, when you look at integration, as I said earlier, you have to look into your internal and your external environment. Under this integration, just example here, we have the supplier one end and the customers on the other end. Now, here you can see that the flows, okay, would digitalization your organization will work only effectively if you have all the components working together as a whole, okay, not in a silo mode, That means they cannot be standalone. Now, the essential for process integration, based on this simple example, is you need to get as many of the various components to share information. For example, your production, your marketing, your finance, and that is within the company. And at the same time, you have to obtain good data or information from your customers, like customers needs, wants, and when they want to buy the product. And at the same time, share some of your information together with your suppliers on the other end. Okay. And all this sharing of information will require real time, and it's always usually urgently, okay, because the information must come in at the right time, and also must be appropriate to the individual product or processes you're looking at. All right. So having said that, so your process here, integration of the supply chain would require you to look into your purchasing, inventory, production, quality, logistics, and other decisions that you have to make to achieve your overall aims of your company. Okay. If any one of those processes that I just mentioned, it could be inventory, it could be production, or it could be logistics, are not properly performed or did not achieve the expectations, then the flow of products or goods between the manufacturer to the customers, or from the suppliers to you as manufacturer, will be disrupted, which means it will entirely jeopardize the supply chain. Okay. So having said that, successful supply chain processes integration occurs when all the participants realize that effective supply chain management must become a part of each member's strategic planning processes, where the objectives and policies have been well determined from end to end, from the supplier side all the way to meet the customer's needs as a whole. Okay. Now, moving on, once you have achieved this integration, okay, then you can include technology inside each of these processes. The technology as softwares, basically software and hardware. You can get a lot of software, hardware in the proprietary companies, like some of these IT companies, supply chain softwares, ERP softwares, CRM softwares, okay, and then you even have the e-commerce softwares, okay. So once you're able to achieve your integration in terms of using technology, now the next stage is, as I said, if you look at all companies, in order, you can see the impact of a successful supply chain model through these four flows. What we call is it affects the overall company's objectives. For example, number one is we need to look at how your product flow from the suppliers all the way to the customers. Now, if you are the manufacturer here, okay, then obviously you're looking at the production side. Now, if you are one of those sub-suppliers, you could be a contractor, supplier to main other manufacturers, because there are a lot of what they call semi-finished products, okay? So then you will be under the contracted manufacturers. Or are you a wholesaler? Okay, even if you're listening to me, if you're a wholesaler or distributor, you will be involved in this supply chain. So it's important to know that how the product flows from the supplier to the retailer, what sort of information is required depending on which part of the supply chain you are in. Okay. The third element, which is very important, is cash flow or finance flow. Now, what it does is, in order to understand how you want to achieve your company performance, all right, you cash flow is very important element. Okay, and finally is the demand flow. Here you're talking about managing how much to produce, what to supply to the customers as and when is required, in the right quantity and also in the right quality of the product. So better planning on that one will it will result in better planning to meet customer satisfaction over a period of time. Hopefully you get better. All right. So these flows um, will be just to add on a bit more is these are the main issues of these various flow items. Okay. Now, having said that, I need to show you, if you have a fully digitalized supply chain or in your company. Now, this is a model which I extracted from one of the authors, A.T. Kearney. It is quite complex, all right? But what you have here is an entire system, okay? Is the impact of your digitalizing of your supply chain to a company, okay? There are many benefits here, okay? If you look at some of them is new product development, okay? Or you can achieve demand forecasting. You can get improvement in capacity planning, which is your factory resources. There are a lot of areas here which involve smart technology, using technology to make supply chain better and smarter. Okay. In other words, you may have a system to help the management make good decisions. The technology here, if you look at some of this available technology, will significantly give advantage, okay, to the companies who is not practicing any of these technology at the present moment. Now, in the long term, okay, I'm talking about depends. Sometimes some companies, when you invest in technology, okay, it may look quite expensive. You know, investment is quite high. It may come to a couple of millions, depending on software and hardware you use. But you have to think in terms of medium term and a bit longer term. Maybe you're talking about 3 years, okay, or 5 years for payback, okay. Under this cost savings over long term, you will get better outcomes for your company as a whole. Now, a lot of these technologies will will leverage on using the cloud. I mean, there's a new technology is moving very fast. I'm sure that my other colleague, Professor Yap, is talking about the cloud technology, which you can implement for a lot of companies and a lot of processes. Now, in today's supply chain parameters, okay, the cloud technology is definitely a big help, okay, particularly in being flexible to the company and allow the company to adapt to change. On this issue, it's very difficult to adjust on-premises or custom-coded applications, okay, in response to changing circumstances, okay. So cloud solutions, okay, you know, if you're looking for softwares, okay, you can customize those cloud solutions to your individual companies. They are basically to improve your processes, and these technologies are available. Okay, they are available. Okay, so you need to try to adapt to the new technologies available and how they can improve your supply chain processes. Now, there's something I want to mention here. If you look at digitalization, okay, so you have to start thinking, First, what sort of data are you talking about? The information that you're looking at. Okay, are you looking at customer information? Are you looking at what your suppliers information? Are you looking at production information? Whatever the information you're looking at, they must involve the data or information you need to do, you need to have, and the processes of your operations. What is involved in your production, in your marketing, in your finance, everything. Okay, the entire company. The third element is organization. It is very important you have the right people, the resources, okay, the right people to implement this sort of technologies. Okay, sometimes maybe you may need experienced people. Okay, and obviously there's always a shortage of good IT people, and but depending on the industry you're in. And the last word is technology. All these four areas: data, processes, organization, and technology, combine together to manage your supply chain. All right. Okay, now moving on is I'd like to show you this diagram. This diagram basically telling you represent the company you're looking at if you are fully digitalized. It doesn't show people. It doesn't show the product that you're looking, but it captures the entire system of any company. All right. You can see the aeroplane. I mean, you can see the factory. You can see the lorries, the trucks. Everything is all in a system, and they are all digitalized, right? Which means it could be artificial AI controlling. You can even talk about blockchain. All right. These are all the issues that will be incorporated inside your system. All right. So if I mean, I had been discussing with a lot of companies in Malaysia, particularly and multinationals, and they have software and hardware, which is in a nutshell helping their company to drive better, to achieve more efficiency, to achieve a better decision making, and this is the world we are living in. You can't run away from it. Okay, accept it. That's my message here. All right. Okay, let me move on a little bit here. What are the current trends? Okay, the second part of my talk. Okay, in supply chain management today. Now, I've been talking a little bit about the analytics here. Okay, what I'm talking about is information is so much. Every day, even when we're teaching, we get a lot of information. Okay, students' data, students' information, even the subject information, changes in the way we do our delivery to the students. The system that we have. You can't run away from big data. In other words, you have to analyze this data. You've got to accept there is a lot of data available. Okay, so that is one of the big area in the new world, where you're talking about big data in retail, in healthcare, in manufacturing, and electronics. Okay, so this is what is happening today. So business analytics is one of the areas we're looking at to help you to make better decisions, and hopefully to improve your processes. All right. The second area I would like to talk about is sustainability performances. You probably hear this word many times from all sorts of other seminars that you probably hear. I think yesterday one of my colleagues was talking about, they call it the triple bottom line, or sustainable, involving people, planet, and profits. Okay, you just cannot look at profits alone. Okay, what it's talking about is if you have a sustainable system where you're talking about protecting the people, protecting the planet, and also incorporating some profits, and to be social responsible, you need to improve on these areas, and so it's getting more and more important in today's world. I'm sure that you probably read some of the cases where if you are not doing socially responsible business. The Western countries like America, Europe may ban your product from there. Okay, things like sustainable forests. You know, you cut the trees, you need to regrow the trees so that you can continue the production processes. Now it involves re-looking, okay, you know, reimagining again your processes. You have to see how you can make it um, environmental friendly, okay? And to a certain extent, they also help you over a period of time reducing costs. You know, there are processes that actually can reduce your costs, okay? Increase productivity, um, improve product innovation. You know, when you look at thinking of changing your way to produce a product and maybe more environmental friendly, you may actually need to be more innovative. um, Market differentiation is another one. Okay, so that means you may have a better value for your product because society accept your product to be more sustainable. Okay, and also on society outcomes. You know, if people are feeling that society is changing in the world today, and particularly the new generations, those who are born 2000 and above, they will have a better understanding of some of these changes in society. All right, the third area is supply chain visibility. Now, on this issue, what I want to say is it involves the ability of suppliers, manufacturers, business partners, and customers to know exactly where products are at any point in the supply chain. This is available. The technology is available. Okay. For example, if I want to track a customer, okay, for a delivery of your online purchase from McDonald's, let's say you go McDonald's online purchase, here they can track it through your handphone. Okay, every handphone has a unique code. Okay, so this is what I mean by visibility. There are a lot of technologies that's available. Okay, it's maybe a bit expensive, but over medium term, okay, you can get a better return from this technology because you see, you may reduce your cost by in terms of knowing your inventory, in terms of knowing where the products are, and so for a better delivery to your customers. Okay, it's a win-win situation if you have a good visibility software. Okay. Naturally, once the technology is available, then it's much easier to track your products. Now, going to the last part, moving to the last part of my talk here, is I'm suggesting here 6 potential areas which you could look into digitalizing. In other words, if you are doing a semi-digitalizing, you see, there's no system that is not digitalized at the moment. Okay, in processes in companies. Okay, you may not have achieved a certain level. Okay, but at a start, okay, I based on my experiences and also talking to corporate companies, what I found out is these are the 6 areas that you may want to look into digitalizing. 1, your supply chain network. All right, here. Okay. 2, inventory management. 3, information systems. 4, the cost and the value. In other words, your investment and your return, what you get out of your investment. 5th is technology. That means the software and hardware that you have in your system today. The number 6 is you need to look into one of the big areas today is transportation management, because in transportation, that is usually the last part before the customer gets product or services. Okay, so that's the area that I'm focusing on. All right, now there are other areas. There are total there are 11 areas. The other 5 areas are equally important, but it may take you some time to incorporate into your overall digitalization of your businesses. Okay. All right. Now let me show you. These are the areas. Okay. Now each of them have their own unique advantage when you have your supply chain system. If you look at the network system, okay, we're talking about infrastructure, the facilities that you are providing, the transportation services that you're looking at. Is it rail, by road, by air, or even by ship? Okay, this all must be capable and flexible to respond to the change with market dynamics. In other words, the market is changing. For example, the market will be your customers. Okay, you look at your customers. Now, obviously, it's not just the buyer, but you have intermediate customers as well. So, you may be an industrial supplier as well. Okay, so these are the important areas that you may have to adapt or adopt as well. The next one is inventory management. Okay, with the increase, it's written there, coordination or integration, where you can reduce your inventory level on a single firm, or if you're in the vertical level, you're talking about multiple firms in the supply chain. This has been one of the biggest setback in supply chain. Actually, we call it the theory here is a bullwhip effect. Okay, the bullwhip effect is creating this unnecessary additional safety stocks. Okay, where it's not moving, customers that are not buying those items. They are actually the excess stocks that we are producing. Okay. Next is information. Now I written there. Okay. The information challenges here is how well do you share information along the supply chain? In other words, if you are a manufacturer, do you have enough information from your supplier in terms of component supply, in terms of price, quantity, and the improved items that they're going to supply you? Next is the other end is your customers. Okay, it could be intermediate customers. The more information or data that you have, like if you know who your customers are, when they want the item, what price they want to buy, where's the location, those are very important information. Okay, and it can help you in terms of reducing your costs, and obviously it will translate to improved productivity. Okay, now another area is I suggest you to digitalize is your area in cost and value, your investment costs. So if you buy machines and if you have software, okay, those are investment costs. Okay, and how do you maximize the value? How do you get the return from that particular investment? Okay, it's a trade-off. Okay, that's why a lot of companies, when they digitalize or they include a lot of technology, software, hardware into the systems, it's not cheap. Believe me, I know. I've spoken to a lot of not a lot, some of these big companies, and they are very careful of their investment in this hardware and software. Technology is not cheap, and when you invest it, it's not the end. You have to update as well. You have to have the people to run the system as well. So there is a lot of cost involved. Okay. I cannot give you a simple answer on that one, but you will have to determine, because depending on what business you're in, are you a distributor, are you a manufacturer, and what sort of product are you manufacturing? Okay, and you have to work within what you can and see what is that returns. Okay. Now another area the last two, which I would like to suggest you to digitalize is, what sort of technology are you looking at? You see, it's not just technology you're buying, it's not the software, hardware. Okay, I mean, everybody knows that. Okay, how well do you implement that technology? does it achieve what you want? What is your corporate objectives? What is your department objectives? What sort of medium term objectives are you looking at? Okay, you have to think about it. Okay, and sometimes when you look at technology, they do get obsolete very fast. We are going to 5G. I think everybody knows that technology is moving to 5G. So if you're using 3G technologies, you may have to change everything basically. Okay, and the last one is transport management, which I said many times. Now, apparently, in the supply chain area, they call it the perfect storm. What it means is you may have everything done. You got the best product, best quality, best what I call the supplier and supply chain. But when it comes to delivery, okay, it happened in the UK. I think everybody knows. The supermarket shelves are empty simply because the products are not getting there. Everything is there. I mean, done, except that there's nobody to deliver. I mean, the lorries are not moving. I think recently, a couple of months back, UK was facing some petrol. It's not really shortages actually. Actually, there's long queue for the petrol. Okay, it's just because the people wanting to buy the petrol could not find the petrol in the petrol station, simply because the delivery trucks are not delivering the petrol into the petrol stations. Okay, all right. And this is another area which you may need to look into. I'm talking about new technologies. For example, instead of using motorcycle, people moving from place to place to your place, you may think about the new technology in America today is being used, is using drone technology. Recently, I think there's one company are focusing on the word drone technology. Okay, so I just leave it there for you. All right. Okay, just to finish off, there's some quotes I'm about to say. You have to believe, hopefully, that supply chain today is the future. If you are looking at your business success, you have to look at your supply chain, because it is the advantage that you may have, compared to your other competitors. And equally important, the last statement here is, rather last quote here, SCM is all about the customer. All right, I just leave it there for you. All right. This is another quote that I got it from another CEO. I just highlighted here. Artificial intelligence assisted systems, that is technology. Efficient, cost-effective manner, technology. Global economy, seamless and effortless as possible. If you look at all these keywords, they are part and parcel of supply chain management. All right. So looking into the future, one or two slides here is beyond 2000, or rather, 2000 and 2010, it's not big difference. If you look at it, so you have to look at the supply chain emphasis on the industrial buyer. When we look at industrial buyer compared to a merchant buyer, industrial buyer is basically talking about when they take the raw material or the product that they buy in, from supplier, they are converting that into a better product or something, a finished product. That's why it's an industrial buyer. Okay, so they are in a conversion business actually. All right, but if you look at the merchant buyer, okay, they are distributing the item. Okay, so that's different. All right, logistics and customer service emphasis. Remember I mentioned supply chain is talking about focusing on the customer. Finally, I mentioned these three words: supply chain capabilities. If you look at the future, the earlier slides, I said the capabilities involved. These are some of the initiatives. It's not the end. Third-party logistics. Think about them. They may be helpful to help you to enhance your delivery. Integrating logistics. Usually, depending on when your customer are, where they are. And also enterprise resource planning. This is part and parcel of your processes in your production system. All right. Okay, in summary, I think it's just basically reading up. The rate of change is affecting the external environment, the forces, including by the globalization issues, technology, organizational are changing very fast, and also with this additional disruption like the pandemic, okay, is something totally different. It's shifting the power in supply chain and looking at customers are getting more demanding and empowering customers, and the government policies I mentioned to you earlier, trade restrictions and things like that, they are all part and parcel, which makes supply chain more critical. In other words, you need to look deeper and deeper and more intensively into your supply chain, forcing companies, and SMEs is no different. And digitalization, okay, I'm not going to read there, but I think you're quite familiar what I just said. Products flow, look at your product flow, look at your information flow, look at your cash flow, I mean your financial flows, and also the demand at customers, how they move, what sort of volume and quantity and quality. And the global supply chain of the best companies must be, well, now, I can make you a few, you can add as many words as I want, but you got to look at the right technology to be adaptive, resilient, responsive to meet the challenges of the global economy. Even you are the SME, think about it. Somewhere along the line, either your raw materials or your semi-finished products will end up in a different country. So we are all integrated. Okay, we cannot be just looking at Malaysia alone. Okay, although you're an SME, okay, because it will affect your business. If you look back, it could be foreign exchange, it could be a trade restriction, or it could be raw materials insufficiency. Like for example, one example is semiconductors. There was a huge shortage of semiconductors, and it affect the car production. Things like that. Okay. All right, and also the final one is recommendations of the 6 areas of digitalization. I already mentioned your network, distribution network, inventory management, your information system, your cost and value, your technology, and your transportation management. All right. Now, okay, I just say I put here my contact. Should you want to clarify or elaborate some items, I'm fine. Okay, I'm the program leader for the global supply chain. Please feel free, you can send me email and let's see what sort of questions you do have. All right. Now, these are some of my references. Now, I want to emphasize something here. All the images and information, case studies, corporate information are subject to copyright, and its use is for educational purpose only. That's why I do not mention any companies. In fact, we are restricted from mentioning them as an example. Okay, thank you very much. I've done with my presentation. I hope you capture some issues about supply chain and how it can create more benefits to you during the pandemic time, and with all these business disruptions, it's good. The pandemic is not going to go away for a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more years. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm wait to see whether, let's see if we got any questions. All right. Okay. All right. Now, I don't, any questions for anyone? If you feel much better, you can email me. It's fine. No questions? If you could answer my, click in, which of these, any 3 that you think you would be impact on your company's, shall we say, bottom line, like profits, and costs, and it would be great to know. Okay, thank you, Asman, for that compliment. Anyone else?